Hi there and welcome. Today we're going to talk about the behavioral interview matrix, which is a tool that I created to help me prepare for interviews. This tool helped me get clarity on which stories I wanted to tell and how best to recount them, which took a ton of pressure and anxiety off of the interview itself because I knew that I was prepared. I'm really excited to share more about this game-changing tool with you today. Welcome to the Jamie on Purpose show. I'm Jamie. This show is for the young professional woman who is ambitious and aspirational and wants to make the world a better place. We'll chat all things professional and personal development along our journey to being tomorrow's CEOs, government officials, and community leaders. Let's jump in. So when I was in the thick of interviewing for jobs, I remember going through several behavioral interviews, and truthfully, it was an exhausting process to be telling stories all the time, because what I noticed was a pattern in these interviews where almost every question started with, "Tell me about a time when," and it felt like every interviewer wanted to know the same type of thing, the same type of stories over and over again. It was things like how you handle conflict, how you handle failure, times that you were successful, and in general, how do you handle working with others? So after a few rounds of this, where I was really stressed out because I kept coming up with examples from scratch on the fly in the interview, I decided to systematize. And behold, the behavioral interview matrix was born. The behavioral interview matrix is a tool that I created to help me plot out my stories according to my experience and the most typical interview questions that I kept getting over and over again. So I have created it in spreadsheets, but you can definitely use pen and paper if that's more your style. You can also go to jamieonpurpose.com/8, the number 8, because this is episode 8, to get the example where I have built it in Google Sheets. So you can make a copy of it there and get yourself set up in a spreadsheet, which I recommend because then you get more flexibility. So here's how you set it up. Across the top, you will list out all of the typical questions as your column headings. So you want to fill in the blank, tell me about a time when. In my template that you can download, I have, tell me about a time when you faced a challenge, you made a mistake or you failed, you really enjoyed a part of your work, you showed leadership, you managed a conflict, or you do something differently. So those are my top column headings. Those are the most typical questions that I was getting in those interviews. And I was really strategic in picking those because I feel like that gives you a wide variety of maybe more negative experiences, but also positive experiences that you can pull from. And then along the left side of your matrix that you're creating, take the major items from your resume and list them out vertically. So you're creating rows. These can be things like your work experience, great projects that you've been part of, anything that has a major section on your resume, be sure to have a line for it as a row on your matrix. You can also add some of the minor things from your resume, like professional clubs that you're part of, or even topics that aren't on your resume, like interesting hobbies, that you feel could give your interviewer a really good sense of your full personality and how well-rounded you are. And voila! So from here, just fill in the intersecting spots with examples from your experience to answer the different scenarios. So for example, if your most recent project has a great example of a time that you managed a conflict, go to the corresponding square and fill in some details. You may not have a story for each box in the matrix, but this will help you to build out your repertoire of answers so that you can prepare to recount the examples of your amazingness. This helps you ahead of time to identify which stories you have and which ones are your strongest. It also helps you brainstorm a diverse set of stories. So instead of always talking about a single project or experience, you can reference many different experiences to provide the interviewer a wide breadth of your experience, so they really get a picture of who you are and what all you have done. All right, so to take this interview prep one step further, we're going to build out a second matrix. So this is your Matrix 2.0 star stories. And if you have the download from the website, then this is just on the second tab, but we're going to walk through how to build it out on your own spreadsheet or pen and paper. So along the side for your row names, pick out some stories that you identified on the behavioral interview matrix. So maybe they're your favorite ones to retell, like they're your strongest ones that you're really excited to make sure that the interviewer knows about. Or maybe they are ones that you are certain are going to be asked in this interview. Maybe they're even your least favorite ones, and you know that you need some more practice on them because you know that they're a good story to tell, but maybe you need to finesse them a little bit. Some examples that come to mind there are any around failure or anything about your weaknesses. You know that you need to be prepared to speak to those in a way that is eloquent and very intentional. And so picking one of those to build out for your star story matrix is a great candidate. So across the top, we will have spelling out the STAR acronym, and that is situation, task, action, and result. And then if you want to do the STAR AR, which I recommend, the last two letters would be alternate action and different result or alternate result. So this method comes from lots of well-researched storytelling techniques, and it is one that interviewers are expecting you to follow, at least somewhat loosely, because it covers all of your bases. So in application, what this looks like is for your stories that are listed across the side, you want to think through and write down the situation or the relevant context, the task at hand, the action that you took, and the result that it had. Especially in the case of any of the ones where it's like, tell me about a time that you made a mistake or you failed or something you would have done differently. You definitely want to include the alternate action, so what I would do next time, and then what you would hope the different outcome would be as a result of that. So if we take your leadership story from your most recent project, we'll pluck that out of the behavioral matrix and put it into the STAR matrix. So for situation, this could look like identifying that you were the project manager on a team of 10, and your task is that you've got a launch coming up that you want to be successful. Action is the bulk of your story. So this is where you tell the interviewer what all you did. This is, all of the good things. This is really the meat of what it is that you want to convey. And then the result is how it turned out. So you can also allude to an alternate action. These are the 2 or 3 things that I learned in this process that I'll take to my next one, and how that would impact the result. So reiterating, the situation piece sets up the context. The task introduces the conflict or the objective. Action is all the interesting stuff, and result is the outcome. So again, this is the structure that interviewers are looking for when they ask these behavioral types of questions. You'll want to get in the habit of thinking about your stories in this way, and filling out the matrix will really help you kind of train your brain on providing enough context and enough structure around your stories that when you go into the interview, you're not the interviewer. When you go into the interview, you are ready to convey your story in the best way possible. Because even if you don't recite the story verbatim to the matrix in your interview, you'll have identified the major parts of the story ahead of time, and that really does set you up for success. So this also applies if the interviewer asks a question that you haven't explicitly prepared for. So you can likely pull elements from one of your other prepared stories, and because you've done the STAR exercise, you'll be in good shape to recount the experience in that really good structure that gives the interviewer all of the context that they need to follow your story. Once you've put in the work to think through these stories and their structure, you're ready to rock your interview. Review them before the interviewer, and remember that they are your stories. So tell them from the heart, and be sure to show the interviewer all of the amazingness that you have, and good luck.